The intelligence cycle is the five-step process of developing raw information into finished intelligence for policymakers to use in decision-making and action. The 5 steps include, in order, planning and direction, collection, processing, analysis and production, and dissemination, which is the circulation of information. It is used to ensure that law enforcement agencies and all government agencies follow a system of checks and balances and are able to do their jobs thoroughly and correctly. Here are some baseline facts about the Pulse nightclub shooting. 49 people were killed and 53 were injured in a mass shooting at a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. The shooter was a 29-year-old Afghan man named Omar Mateen, who had called 911 during the attack so he could pledge allegiance to ISIS and let it be known that this was his motive. However, there is still no solid evidence that he was an ISIS fighter before the attack. There are still speculations that Omar chose the Pulse for his attack because it is a gay nightclub, as his parents admitted that he had expressed outrage after seeing 2 men kiss. Omar's ex-wife said that he was abusive, bipolar, and religious, but she did not believe his religion played a part in the attack. The FBI had interviewed Omar twice before, in 2013 and 2014, after he had expressed sympathy for a suicide bomber, but they turned out to be inconclusive, so the investigation was cut off. The Orlando Police Department received the first calls regarding the shootings and were therefore the first on the scene, along with the Orlando SWAT team. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement was called in after the mass shooting to assist. Since this crime victimized the LGBTQ community specifically, since it was a gay nightclub, the FBI must be involved and investigate it as a hate crime. The FBI would be involved even if this attack was not at a gay bar, because of the perpetrator's allegiance to ISIS, so the attack would have to be treated as a suspected terrorist attack as well. The ATF is also involved. Since the attacker used guns in his attack, we need to know when they were obtained, if they were purchased legally or illegally, or if they were purchased at all, and if there was another possible reason for the suspect to be in possession of such firearms. When the suspect called police while inside the club and pledged his allegiance to ISIS, he told police that there was a car outside with bombs and that he was going to set them off. This means that the EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technicians, had to be called to the nightclub and also to Omar's house as a precaution. It should be taken into serious consideration that this is a suspected terrorist attack and the suspect had pledged allegiance to ISIS. There was a bomb threat involved as well, which means that this could have been thousands of lives in danger still. The need for cross-agency and international cooperation is very important in both this scenario and issues involving different nations, because having other agencies and law enforcement officers on your side and sharing information, ideas, and skills can be extremely beneficial and efficient, not to mention how difficult it would be to have those same agencies not want to help you or not want to gain information to solve a crime. In the collection phase of the intelligence cycle, some of the key types of information that should be sought after in the case of the Pulse nightclub shooting are who the suspect had been interacting with in the months, even years, prior to the attack in order to know if anyone had knowledge of what was going to happen, or if he was really in contact with ISIS as he claimed he had been. The law enforcement agencies need to assess the history of the suspect's mental and physical health and try to piece together what state he was in when he attacked the nightclub, since he's no longer alive to evaluate. A motive is important to try to uncover in this section also. Why did Omar choose this specific nightclub? Is there a reason for the attack happening on this specific day or time? In this case, open source intelligence is very helpful and effective as it encompasses things such as personal interviews and searching through social media, both of which are very useful in finding information about an individual, his thoughts, and his wants. In this case, human intelligence would be very important, but technological intelligence would by far be the most useful and powerful in figuring out the details of the attack and if there could be another one. As is the case for most terrorist attacks, time is a very important thing to keep in mind. The possibility of a follow-up attack is most common in the 36 hours after the initial attack, meaning that authorities need to work quickly and thoroughly to defuse and uncover any situations. There is bias found everywhere, and the intelligence community is no different. Regarding this case, bias may arise when interviewing Omar's family and friends, hindering relationships with people who may be helpful. Unfortunately, there could also be bias surrounding the victims since they are homosexual, which would even further negatively affect the case and how it is analyzed and dealt with. Because terrorism is such a big threat and handled so carefully, I know that not just one intelligence product would result from this case. However, the first one, and probably the most important one for the immediate safety of the majority, would be warnings. Overlapping and integrated techniques are bound to be used as well. For example, posting warnings on certain news websites or social media sites to see if there are any suspicious reactions would be an overlapping of warnings and counterintelligence. The main consumers for the warnings created through this cycle are the American citizens, especially, in this case, the LGBTQ community and other minority communities. As for the warnings and counterintelligence overlapping product, it is meant to seem as if it is for the citizens, when in reality it's meant to obtain further information and single out others who may be a threat to society. Because this was arguably the worst act of terrorism on American soil, the story is going to be all over the news, and details are going to be misused and misleading. With the huge press and amounts of attention the situation is receiving, it may be difficult to get through to people and have them listen to certain information over other things they may be seeing and hearing. The aftermath of terrorist attacks seem to have a common theme regarding the decisions that are made by the leaders. More protection and more counterintelligence strategies and techniques, but still more fear instilled in the citizens. In the case of the Pulse nightclub shooting, it is hard to blame gun laws, although that is the easiest scapegoat. One could argue that since Omar Mateen had been investigated by the FBI twice in his past, he should not have been able to purchase firearms. However, since these investigations turned out to be inconclusive, it would be unconstitutional to refuse Omar his right to bear arms. It would be helpful, although expensive, to make it a law that nightclubs must have a no-weapons policy and require guests to go through a metal detector prior to entering. Having it be a law to have more emergency exits may be an important consideration as well. Long-term goals of analyzing this case would be to better understand the minds and thought processes of terrorists and to reconsider how the FBI deals with people who they investigate in the aftermath, especially those who are investigated more than once, such as Omar Mateen was.